bum 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 ba-dum bum 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 ba-da-da-dum bum bum ba-dum ba-ba-dum rum bum 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 ba-dum bum 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 ba-da-da-dum bum bum ba-dum ba-ba-dum. Hello, my friends. Hi, Donna. From Sebastian, Florida. So glad that you're here. Glad to be home. Hi, friends. Hi, Barb. Hi, everyone. It's great to see everyone. Prayers out to those in Texas. Let's just hope that gets resolved as quickly as possible for the sake of those grieving families. Hello from Panama, says Veronica, or Veronique. And hello from New York and Tennessee. Marie, wonderful to see you all, my friends. Hi, I'm Joette Calabrese, and I'm here every Monday night. And I'm here to do one thing and one thing only, and that is to teach you what I know about homeopathy so that you can use it, you can learn it, you can pass it on, you can perhaps start a study group through my groups. We have it all set up for you should you want to do that. But if you're happy just being here and only here, I'm happy with that too. So for those of you who do know me, hi friends, it's great to see everyone. Hello from Pennsylvania. Hi, Elizabeth. Hi, everyone. From extremely hot Florida, I know. Well, it's got to be hot in Florida because it's pretty warm up here. Hello from New Jersey. Okay, friends, tonight we're going to be talking more about summer ailments, summer heat ailments. And it really does, and this was the perfect time to do that because even though I'm up north, it's pretty warm up here. And so we want to be prepared. I want you to own medicines, friends. Own a kit. Get a kit from Washington Homeopathics. Get a kit from Helios. Get a kit from OHM Pharma. If you happen to be one of my students or one of my clients, you can purchase from OHM Pharma. I want you to own as many medicines as you can. And people say, oh, I must have, 100 remedies. Come on, my friends, you're going to end up with a couple thousand in the end. She who has the most remedies in the end wins. Because you must be prepared because they don't sell homeopathic medicines in pharmacies generally. Even Whole Foods is no longer carrying boron medicines unless they are combinations. That's not so good. That's not good. So you have to be prepared. Someone just told me recently that they thought, oh, these remedies are old and threw them away. Oh, no, don't throw your remedies away. They will last. Is there an expiration date printed on them? Of course. Is it the FDA on homeopathic manufacturing pharmacies to make sure that they do have these kinds of dates on them? Yes, indeed they do. But I'm going to tell you, my friends, I have homeopathic medicines in my possession that were given to me as gifts, and even some that I've just purchased even on Etsy. That are from 1918, and I've tested them. They still work. How did I test them? Well, once I had a headache, and I knew that the medicine that worked best for me is Kelly Bicromium for those kinds of headaches. Took the remedy that was from 1918, over 100 years ago, and it still acted. Yes, my friends, they will last. They will last, and they will not corrupt. So own as many as you can. It's an investment. You want to own as many as you can afford. So let's talk about heat and heat stroke. And so a lot of times what I do is I just tell you what the medicines are, and I go over, what potency, what frequency, etc. But I want to show you something that for those of you who have been following me for a while, you already own one of these books. For those who have gone through my classes or my academy, you own this book. For those who have not, then you might be interested in considering this. This is Robin Murphy's 4th edition of the Repertory. It's called Meta Repertory 4th edition by Robin Murphy, ND, and you can purchase this directly. Well, I think you can find it on Amazon, as a matter of fact. And so when I'm looking for a medicine that can be used, unless I'm using a protocol, certainly, and protocols essentially stem from the Repertory, not 100%, but they basically stem from the knowledge a collection of found in this Repertory. I mean, look at this. Look at how Look at how thorough this book is. And these are not sentences. There are 2,600 pages here. This is Bible paper, very thin. It's a medical book, and it's, I don't know how much they cost now. Does anybody know how much this book costs? $200, something like that, maybe $150. The volume is low here. Okay, let me speak a little bit more closely to the microphone. Does that help you? I hope that helps. Is the volume a little bit better, friends? Okay. How do you choose potency and frequency when you're repertorizing? Thank you, April. I'll address that. Let's see. How is it? How is my volume now? It's a tad low. That's better, says Pat from Kansas. Better, better, yes, better, better, better. Okay. I was just too far from the microphone. I'll get even closer. So you might hear popping sounds, when I say my P's, etc. But at least you can hear me. So what I do is I go to the clinical section towards the back of the book, and I look up heat, heated, becoming heated. Now, we might think because we're talking about summer that someone's going to become heated. It's only from the sun, right? Or from being overheated, maybe playing, tennis or something like that, and the kids playing around. But that's not necessarily so. I'm looking here and I'm looking at it. Heated becoming aggravates. What does aggravate mean? It makes the person worse. So it causes a condition. So, and there are many, many medicines there. But we also have easily. Heated, becoming heated aggravates easily. And there are only 4 medicines there. Sulfur is one of them. And if you know anything about homeopathy, you know that sulfur is a medicine that often is overheated. It's not just in the heat, but heat does aggravate them. Then we also have heated from a headache. So if we find that the person gets headaches and they get heated, then we know this rubric, which gives us a list of the homeopathic medicines. I'm going to try to show you here. I'm kind of a distance from my camera, but I'm going to show you. These are the page. This is what it looks like. I hope you can see that. What you're looking at, my friends, is not a sentence. These are not paragraphs. These are listings these are rubrics, which means that is the list of the conditions and the homeopathic medicines either proven through provings to be useful in that condition or clinically used in that condition. Very important, probably one of the great intellectual books known to mankind. A repertory, especially this one. I hold Robin Murphy in high regard. Unfortunately, he's passed on, and I got to know him a little, and I was even more impressed with his acumen. So we can go further and say, from headache, heat of stove. How about aggravated by heat of stove? Now, you might think heat of stove gets heat. Well, remember, this information was collected since the early 1800s, late 1700s, when women worked in front of the heat of the stove. They worked at a hot stove. And if they're made worse from the heat of their stove, we're going to consider this rubric because this was put together for us by homeopathic physicians of old. Then we also have by the heat of sauna. In other words, the person gets worse from the heat of a sauna. Look, saunas are not necessarily very comfortable, but it doesn't make us necessarily sick. We're not aggravated by it. And there are only 4 remedies: apis, lachesis, pulsatilla, sulfur. Inconsequential with what we're talking about today, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of a taste of this. But now we get to what's really important here for the subject at hand, and that is becoming heated is aggravated by sun or fire. Could be either one, sun or fire. So if a person gets overheated by the sun, now we have about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times 8, 6, about 50 remedies. Belladonna, beautiful woman. Belladonna in English, belladonna in Latin and Italian. Glanoinum, another really great medicine for being overheated by the sun. Arsenicum, And here's one for those of you who are familiar with homeopathy that you might not have thought about. Ignatia. Ignatia. And so, excuse me. Forget what I just said. Cancel out the Ignatia. Belladonna, Glenoinum, Bryonia is in there, Gelsemium is in there, and Nat Carb is in there. But I have to say, the sun or the fire ameliorates the person. In other words, it makes them feel more comforted to be by the sun, to be exposed to the sun or the fire, and then it's Ignatia. Sorry, please excuse me. I looked too quickly down at that rubric. Now, we know that the top ones are Belladonna and Glenoinum. And I taught Glenoinum last week. I told you about Glenoinum. Glenoinum. And so, even if you can't get the spelling exactly right, although I have someone with me, I think it might be Serena tonight, or Natalie, and they'll write it in for you so that you can see how it's spelled. And then we're going to talk about how you know what potency to use, okay? We'll talk about that in a moment. But how about heated from, when someone is heated, and from the heat, they become weak. Now we have another rubric here that's further up, and now it tells us it's Gelsemium again, Lachesis, Selenium, Sulfur again, and Veratrum. And how about this? Let's get even more specific. Weakness in the heat of the sun, and that is Gelsemium, Nat Carb, and Selenium. Very interesting. Now, what do we make of all of this? These are a lot of medicines. How do we make a choice? Well, homeopaths have known that through the years, when you use a medicine that works for someone for, let's say, the heat of the sun, and they've been made comfortable by taking that medicine, it resolves the condition, that they can count on that medicine perhaps for the next person who complains of the same condition, right? So then they try it again. Let's say they chose sulfur, okay? Let's say they decided sulfur was the medicine that they were going to use for the person that was made heated, was made very uncomfortable, was aggravated by the sun, the heat of the sun, and they used sulfur. And so on a second person, they tried it again. That person was made whole also. And then 2 months later, someone else comes to them and they say, oh my gosh, I just can't be in the sun. I get overheated. It makes me feel so sick. I'm aggravated. They're not going to use the word aggravated by. It's nice if they did, but it's not that simple, as you're going to find in the book. But they are made sick by being in the heat of the sun. And you say, well, let's see, the first time someone complained of that, said it a little differently, but they mentioned it. I used sulfur and it acted. Second time I heard this, a person came to me and said, you know, every time I'm in the sun, I feel awful. And so I don't know what to do. That's that heat. I can't stand the heat, any heat of the sun. Sulfur worked the second time. Okay, now we're at the third person. Does it not make sense then, my friends, to consider sulfur first? Yes, it does. It does. Now, I told you last time that overheated, not by the sun, just overheated, is Glenoinum. So we've got two really powerful medicines here, sulfur and Glenoinum. And so the question came in and was asked, how do you know what potency, what frequency to use? If there's a protocol, and I teach protocols, I teach Banerjee protocols, I teach some Joepathy protocols, I teach some French protocols. I'm always digging about looking for a protocol, because protocols are what I'm just describing to you have happened, have those situations have happened in homeopaths of old, and they found time and again. And after a while, you start realizing, you know, sulfur's really good for feeling really sick from the heat that's related to the sun. And it works. So then after a while, that person who's come up with that notation says, you know what, I'm going to use sulfur 30 every time. So they use sulfur 30. How often do they use it? Well, they say, you know, I find that with most people it works maybe every 15 minutes for the first hour if they're really sick. If they're not so sick, then maybe every 3 hours or something like that. That's how protocols are derived. And so that is, we often start with a 30th potency. And I'm actually very hot right now myself. I've got the air conditioner going and it's not doing a very good job. Still can barely hear. Still, really? Does that help any better if I get that close, my friends? Okay. So, I talked about Nat Sulf last time. And Nat Sulf is particularly useful for ailments from hot and humid. Hot and humid, not just ailments from heat. Ailments from humidity and heat. Yes, you can hear me better. Okay. I'll try to bring it up a little bit. And so I talked about it last time, and here we have folks who are reporting that indeed they were made much better by using Nat Sulf. Do you mean the cell salt or the homeopathic remedy? A cell salt is a homeopathic remedy, Mary. Cell salts are just a category within the homeopathic medicines. So, and most people are comfortable using that in the lower potency. And then, of course, that's when they're called cell salts. But there's still a cell salt if it's a 30, a 6, a 200, a 1M, a 10. It's still a cell salt. But most people know them as 6s generally, 6 potency. So yeah, 6 potency can be very, very useful for people who are made ill from humidity and heat. And sometimes it's just humidity. Sometimes the heat has nothing to do with it at all. They are simply made sick from being around humidity. I'm afraid your mouth has to be up against the mic for the volume to come through, Joette. Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. Yeah, Donna says, sure could have used that remedy when we were in France last week. Yeah, it's true. And that's why, my friends, we travel with our kits. Never leave home without your homeopathy kit, friends. Even if you have, in France, there are pharmacies everywhere that have homeopathic medicines. It's a lot easier. But you could be stuck on a plane and not have the ability to treat yourself or your spouse or your children or whomever. April in Kentucky, all cell salts are 6X, so how do we know which one to use? No, all cell salts are not 6X, my friend. Cell salts can be a 3X, a 3C, a 6X, a 6C, a 12X, a 12C, a 30X, a 30C, a 200C. It's just that cell salts were marketed by Highlands for a long time as those low potencies. No, they can be any potency. So when I'm talking about Nat Sulf, though, I will say, because it's so readily available in a 6X, why not? Let's use it in a 6X, okay? April says Nat Sulf 6X is what worked for sun headache for us. Good, very good. I had the kit, just didn't know the remedy. Yeah, oh, great. Oh, yeah, that's the problem, isn't it? For me, the heat illness, and for my son, for sunburn, yes. I don't like to go anywhere, says Elizabeth, without at least one homeopathy kit. Good. I'm glad you're enjoying this. Great. Let's see what else we've got here. Let's see if we can come up with some other questions. Now let me tell you, if someone is using a homeopathic medicine for something very severe, like let's say it's not just uncomfortable or a headache, etc., but it's a heat stroke, then the higher we might go with the potency of the medicine, often the better. Not always, my friends. You're going to use what you've got until you can get what you need. It's a write or downer. Use what you've got until you can get what you need when it comes to something without a protocol. Okay? And so I want you to use these medicines. You can use it in a 6X. You might have to use it a little more frequently. If it's for the very hot and humid weather, and you're being made ill from it. And then you just use it maybe, every 15 minutes for 1 hour. Then after that, every couple of hours. You'll find that tipping point. That tipping point, you will decipher, you will learn how to use that, how frequently to use these medicines. Okay, excuse me, I'm going to take a little sip of water. I'm sorry, you could probably hear me swallow, for goodness sakes. Okay, so I want you to be thinking about owning all 12 cell salts in a 6X, and then a kit in the 30th potency. And in that 30th potency, my friends, you will still find those cell salts. Not 6s, you'll find them in 30th potencies. So you'll see Nat Sulf in a 30, you'll see calc fluor perhaps in a 30. I'm saying perhaps because many kits do carry calc fluor in that kind of a kit. You'll see Nat Muir in his 30s. So you'll see them going up in potencies. And you should own 6s, 30s, and 200s. All right. Sol worked for my sunburn. And I'm so glad you brought that up. Now, I said this last week, and I don't want to repeat myself too much, but remember, repetition is the mother of learning. So, Elizabeth asks, has anyone ever tried Sol 200 for sunburn preventative? And Anne says she used it for her sunburn. But to prevent it, Anne, I will tell you, Sol is one of our best medicines for prevention of sunburn. Now, do we just use it willy-nilly? No, my friends. We use it for people who are susceptible, quite susceptible, and are made ill. In other words, they get sunburns pretty easily. They know that they're not going to be prudent in their clothing for that day, because I do believe sunscreen is an absolute travesty. We shouldn't even have a bottle of it in our own home. I'm sorry to say, but we shouldn't even own a bottle of it. Instead, we should own a nice, wide-brimmed, great-looking hat and a really cool cover-up. And you sit under a bimini or under an umbrella or something like that if you are prone to sunburn. But if you get a sunburn and you're not necessarily prone, let's see what you folks think we should be using if someone gets a sunburn. They've taken there's pretty good precautions, but they still do not. Protect them. They're unprotected. Aconite of 200. Oh, my, interesting. Authentic Health says Aconite 200 has been so helpful for my Texas heat, for the Texas heat. Yeah, because it's shocking. That's probably why. Okay, Cantharis says Christy and Shelley and Andrea. Cantharis, yes, if somebody gets a burn, we're going to use Cantharis. We could also consider belladonna. We could even, I know this is blasphemous, alternate them. You try one, you see how it goes, take the next one, go back to the first one, go to the second one, Cantharis, belladonna, Cantharis, belladonna. But I'm assuming that the pain is quite extreme because belladonna is all about extremes. It's very red, it's very hot. It's even sometimes even so bad it's even shiny. But I really like Cantharis for sunburns. However, for those people, as I've said, I had a case years ago of a young woman who could not leave her home, her door, could not open the door and get into the car. And she lived, I can never remember where she lived, without getting a sunburn. She wore a hat, she wore gloves. Her skin was extremely sensitive. That was the pathology. She was not laying in the sun. She was not exposed to more than just that. And Sol 200 was the medicine that acted beautifully for her. How would you take it preventatively? How would you take Sol preventatively? We would use a dose of it before we go out in the sun, if we must. I am not one who promotes using medicines, lots of homeopathic medicines, or frequently using homeopathic medicines preventatively. Only if you know the person is going to suffer. In other words, if you're going to Mexico and you know you might be drinking the water that your body is unaccustomed to, I do not suggest that you take arsenicum album as a preventative. I do not suggest that. Instead, I would say, if you go to Mexico and you drink the water and you start becoming ill, now you take arsenicum album. Now, let's make it more extreme. You're going to Mexico, and you know that every time you step foot in Mexico, regardless of whether or not you drink the water, you get diarrhea and stomach upset. Now we use arsenicum album. So in other words, in advance, I want a good rationale, friends. Please don't use these medicines willy-nilly, but then on the other hand, don't be afraid. So I want you to have some boldness, but I also don't want you to jump around, because if you jump around, you will confuse the case. You will confuse yourself. Is Sol available in the U.S.? I don't know that it is. Somebody might be able to tell us. I know that I get Sol from Helios in England. No problem. Oh, here we go. Taproots has Sol, Anne says. There we go. Taproots. Now, Taproots is not the pharmacy, so I don't know where they're purchasing it from. I believe that Taproots is a retailer. Pam in Colombia says, got burned on vacation. Very sad face. She didn't have her cantharis with her. If a sunburn does not resolve into a tan but stays red, would you take Sol? I don't know. Perhaps. Stays red means stays red and painful? Stays red and prickly? Stays red and causes, kind of shivering or a little fever? Definitely. But I have to say that it doesn't mean necessarily that we should be doing it just to get a nice glowy tan. I always feel my best, says Tom, while outside in the sunshine. Yes, I feel the same way. Okay, someone says, I prefer your old website. The new one is confusing. How do you get to Facebook Mighties? I tried to show a friend your website. So if somebody could help Marlene Diamond, one of my associates here, that would be great to help Marlene Diamond get in. My daughter, visiting from dry, cool Pacific Northwest, was overwhelmed by the Toronto heat and humidity. She grew up here but hasn't had been for years and forgot what it is like. Definitely, me too. Now, last week we had problems with our Mighties. Perry, how would you describe it? Pardon me?
We were denial of service attack.
We had a denial of service attack. We were actually attacked. Not personally attacked, but the site was attacked. And it seemed to be coming out of Singapore. Very strange. So last week was an exception, so I hope that you'll have no trouble getting through tonight. Okay, how do you treat a dog with an ear infection with heavy panting? Where can I find a protocol for this? Go Joette Calabrese, ear infection. Joette Calabrese, otitis media. So my friend, you want to use the synonym. Be sure to use the synonym, okay? Use what you've got. Thank you very much. Oh, Natalie's with me tonight. Hi, Natalie. Okay. Someone says she uses, Pat says she uses Sol 30, but I've used Sol 200. I think either one could be good. Alice wants to know about Urtica urns for sunburn. Urtica urns can be great for sunburn, particularly if there are hives. And Tara's saying belladonna, apis, cantharis, belladonna. Urtica urns worked wonders for my son last week with second-degree burn. It can also be used for burns in general, but if there are hives, even more so. Yes, Urtica urns can be very useful for a sunburn. Okay, I missed the Mighties last week. They're all available on Amazon, says Dolly. No, I guess someone in Singapore doesn't like you. I don't think that's what it was. We think they were bots. Right, Perry, wouldn't you say that? They were bots. I have a crackerjack IT team. All right. Would a dose of aconite be prudent for the sunburn before you start the cantharis and or belladonna? If it is a real burn, yes, aconitum is great to start anything where that's shocking. And there's an aspect of a burn, if it's serious enough, that it would be shocking. Yes, a dose of aconite, especially if there's anxiety, angst, worry. Thank you, Elizabeth. Don't worry about me. I should be fine. Anything for redness in the skin all over every summer. She has this with itching. Well, itching and redness, my friends. Xiao Elena is, or Ciao Elena is, I think that's what, it must be in Italian, using the Italian word, Ciao Elena. Somebody help Ciao Elena. It's the remedy I just finished talking about 10 minutes ago. What can be taken instead of a steroid pack? Oh, my goodness, Lori. I don't know what you would be using the steroid pack for. We have to know what the condition is and how it's presenting before we can determine which homeopathic medicine. No doubt. God protect you and yours, Joy. Thank you, Elizabeth. You're very sweet. Fainting in the heat. All right, let's talk about that, friends. Fainting in the heat. Let's see if I can find that protocol. That rubric. Fainting. Let's look under fainting. I'm going to do it really quickly here. Fainting. And fainting with perspiration, fainting from odors, fainting from excitement, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, from heat. This is what it says. I'm going to point it out right here. Fainting from heat. I'm going to look at my index finger. Can you see that? I hope you can. Right there. Fainting from heat. The main remedy is carbo-vegetabilis. But we also have fainting with heat. Little different, right? Little different. Both of those could be considered. Fainting when heated. Fainting when, so there's breaking it down a little bit further. And some might be saying, well, so how do we choose? Well, you don't necessarily just jump on it and choose. What you do is you're looking at all of those. You're looking at each one of those rubrics because each one of them carries something that could be considered valuable. Then each of those medicines are looked in your materia medica, read up on it and see if it fits. That's how you know. Fainting the page number is 2221. Yes. Oh, thank you, Irene from Montreal. Barb says, thank you, Dolly from PA. And the repertoire, yes. Thanks, Irene. It's so lovely. This is what I want. My friends, this is where we learn. This is where you learn to strive. This is where I keep your feet to the fire and keep you thinking. I want you to remain curious. Veronique says Ignatia for fainting would work. Well, let's put it this way. Ignatia is one of our best medicines for fainting, but when it's with the heat, you might want to put it aside a little bit and just consider other possibilities. These others that are written right here because it's so specific. It doesn't mean you couldn't use Ignatia. It means you could certainly consider it, particularly if this person that you're considering giving it to has been aided by Ignatia in other situations. Let's say they get very upset about what their teacher said to them, and they feel so hurt, so grieved by what the teacher said to her that Ignatia clears it up, and it happens time and again that we know that Ignatia is a good medicine for this. Let's say adolescent girl, and then she gets out in the sun and faints in the heat. I might consider Ignatia first because we know that it's done good work for her. Let's see. I saw something else. Can you mention again what materia medica you like? Well, I like mine. And you can get that on Joette's Learning Center. Joette's Learning Center. But it's not, it's a desktop guide. It's a quick comparison so that you can compare between medicines. But I also like these materia medicas by Dr. Boricke, Boricke. Dr. Boricke, and another one that's free, but they're not going to send you the book. It's online. I believe it's a PDF format, and Dr. Fatak, Phatak. But if you want to get really deep, I mean, really, this is what we do in my academy. This is what we do in my courses, is I teach you how to use this repertory and these materia medicas. Then there's Robin Murphy's materia medica, very intense, very in-depth. And I'd like those who are not familiar with using materia medicas to start by using those that are a little more concise. Robin Murphy's materia medica could be overwhelming to someone brand new, and it could be, can get confusing. Not because I don't believe that you have the acumen, but I believe that it can just be, this is such a vast subject. It's so fascinating. It's so vast that I want to tighten it up for you and make it as distilled and as simple as I possibly can. Donna says, I love yours. Good reference, and I could not stop reading. Oh, thank you, Donna. Donna's always so supportive of me. Miranda Castro says that cell salts are not potentized. They are triturated, which is different than regular homeopathics. They are not succussed. I believe that she's right, but they are still, there's a debate between homeopathic, whether or not they're homeopathic or they're nutritional. So I contend that they are homeopathic because of how I use these cell salts, Ruta 6, Calc-Phos 3. I think there's always a discussion around cell salts. So let me just say this. It doesn't really matter, my friend. It does not matter whether or not they are potentized, they're triturated, they're cell salts, they're separate category, they're not homeopathic. It doesn't matter. They're medicines, and they're good medicines. So just use them. And because there's a lot that we don't know, not only in human health, but in homeopathy. Let's see what else we've got here. Lady of the Lake, thank you. I've been able to get a clear. Okay, I see that you're discussing amongst yourselves. I love that. I love the videos that you did on the remedies in your repertory. Thank you, Phyllis. Thanks for saying that. Yeah, the study of homeopathy wards off dementia. No kidding. That and where did I put my? That and butter. Wards off dementia, my friends. Homeopathy, butter, animal fats, animal fats, animal fats, animal fats. I have learned trituration is the first step in making homeopathic medicines for any gross material that does not dissolve in solution. That's absolutely so. We start by, trituration is grinding down a solid solution, a solid material. After Gateway 2, I have used cell salts first. Great, Leslie. Love to hear it. All I know about cell salts is that they work. Thank you, Elizabeth Nair. Thank you very much. Absolutely. So how they are made is, and how homeopathic medicines are made is a whole nother study. And so I don't want to glaze over the fact that they're triturated or they're not, or that they're not potentized and that they're cell salts or they're not. I'd rather just say, just use them and enjoy it. Let's see, replying to Marie and Annabella. Okay, so my staff is saying you can go here to joetteslearningcenter.com. Hello from DC. If I need to take different remedies for different situations, can I take it together? I would generally not take the homeopathic medicines together. Now, because we want them to act individually, if at all possible. Having said that, I've had people tell me, when I give them a schedule of, say, 3 homeopathic medicines to use, one for, let's say, arthritis, another one for insomnia and anxiety, and the third one for eczema, that they didn't follow the directions that my assistant sends them, and they take them all together all at once. That's not really the way that we're supposed to do it, but through the years, I have learned that people do that sometimes, and then my first question is, I don't shake my finger at them and I say, so did it help you? How do you feel? What are the changes? What kind of changes have you had? To what degree? And for how long have they lasted? And I find out that the medicines have acted. So who am I to say that it's better that they only use these medicines individualized or individually and separate them by 10 minutes, for example? So perhaps if you want to err on the side of extra caution, separate them by, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, something like that. Oh my goodness, it's 8:38. Okay, I'm ready to go to my mighties. I certainly hope that we're not being attacked again, Perry. Are we being attacked? Okay, good. All right, friends, all of you who are in mighties, come on over. If you have difficulty getting to mighties, and it's this week, I understand last week was a problem, and you have any trouble, contact my office. Contact my contact at Joette Calabrese, and we will help you. We will help you decipher what's going on and get you up and running. I have a staff that is killing it, helping people always. Vicki says she can't get in. So if you could, Natalie, if you could help Vicki, Meisels, Elsweig, and some other people who are showing up and saying they might be having trouble getting in. All right, my friends, I'll see you next week. For those of you who are not Mighty members, for those of you who are, stay here and I'll continue answering your questions.